The hill ranges of the Western Ghats, a global biodiversity hotspot, extend along the western coast of India in a stretch of 1,600 kilometres and cross 6 states. They start in the north near the river Tapi in Gujarat and end near the southeastern tip of India in Tamil Nadu. Most of the range reaches about 800 to 1,000 metres, but its peaks are over 2,000 metres, with Anamudi near Munnar in Kerala at 2,695 metres. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and is one of the 8 hotspots of biological diversity in the world. It contains a very large proportion of the country's flora and fauna, much of which is only found in India. The range runs north to south along the western edge of the Deccan Plateau and separates the plateau from a narrow coastal plain called the Konkan along the Arabian Sea. Goa is situated in the middle of the range. The term Goa Gap indicates that the hills in Goa are lower than those in Maharashtra to the north and in Karnataka to the south, and form the border between the northwestern Ghats and the southwestern Ghats moist deciduous forest area. For some birds, like Wayanad laughing thrush and white-bellied tree pie, this is the most northerly part of their distribution. Others, like Viger's sunbird, are rarer south of Goa, and their range does not extend into South India. The average altitude of the hills in Goa is 600 to 800 metres, with Sonsogor Peak in Sattari Taluka at 1,166 metres as its highest point. The part of the Western Ghats bordering Goa in the neighbouring state of Karnataka on its east is a plateau covered with thick forest. The plateau ends in a steep escarpment and drops down about 500 metres to the Konkan Plain, which is nearly at sea level. In North Goa, the hills are about 60 kilometres from the coast, while in South Goa, they extend right down to the coast itself at Kapodirama. The escarpment is dotted with steep canyons with rivers flowing through them. All of Goa's rivers originate from the Ghats. The Mandovi River, the largest in Goa, flows from the hills near Surla, the only village that is in Goa's territory on the plateau east of Chorla Ghat. The Mandovi first flows east towards Karnataka. It then makes a sharp turn and flows west into Goa, near Krishnapur village. The main rivers, Chapora, Mandovi and Zuari, are perennial, and water flows in them year-round. These rivers have many tributaries. Most of them are dry in winter and may have only a few pools or very little flowing water in the dry season. These streams come alive in the monsoon and create spectacular waterfalls. After the monsoon ends, usually in October, it doesn't rain at all until April. The summer rains are not regular, and sometimes it does not rain at all until the next monsoon in June. By winter, most water sources are dry, and water is left flowing only in streams. Later, these too dry out, and water is left only in small pools, which attract many birds. 2 species of forest kingfishers, oriental dwarf and blue-eared, can be found along these streams. The formation of Mahade and Netravali wildlife sanctuaries in 1999 made Goa the only state in the country that protects the entire area of the Western Ghats that fall within that state. Unlike most protected areas in India, where entrance is prohibited without a guide, and in many places is only possible in a four-wheeled vehicle, the sanctuaries in Goa can be accessed with a motorbike, and most importantly, on foot. A small entry fee is charged at the gate. In some places, like Bondla Wildlife Sanctuary, entry is from 9 a.m, which is a major setback for birders, but usually the forests around the gate are good enough for birding. The sanctuaries in North Goa, Molem, Mahade and Bondla, are about 90 minutes drive from the major beach resorts in Baga and Anjuna. And in South Goa, Kotigao is only 30 minutes from Palolem Beach. Netravali is about an hour further, and it is the most beautiful sanctuary in Goa. It sits in the heart of the tribal area and has a few spectacular waterfalls, much more easily accessed than Dudhsagar waterfall near Molem, and are popular as picnic spots for locals. Although Goa lacks some of the South Indian endemic birds, it is probably the easiest state to bird in. One can easily leave one's family in their beach resort and go for a morning's birding in the Western Ghats and come back for lunch. Being able to walk in the forests is an opportunity for birders to improve their skills, and for photographers there are better chances for good shots. There are many nature trails designed by the Forest Department, ranging from a few hundred meters to a few kilometers in all the sanctuaries. Fruiting and flowering trees are a major food source for the birds of the Western Ghats. The diversity of trees and differences in altitude within a small distance mean that birds can find food year-round. Different kinds of fig trees fruit in different seasons, and the same kind may give fruits earlier at lower altitudes. Silk, cotton and red coral trees are leafless in the dry season in Goa. From late January until late March, brilliant crimson and red flowers burst open from their buds. These flowers attract a large variety of birds that feed on their nectar. Giant bamboo was planted all over the forests of the southern Western Ghats shortly after India's independence. These trees live about 60 years. Before they die, they flower and spread their seeds. Since many of them were planted at the same time, a massive flowering of bamboo was observed between 2010 and 2012. And with it, a large number of birds were seen feeding on its flowers. Two major highways that connect Goa with Karnataka pass through the Western Ghats. In the north, the road that climbs Chorla Ghat passes through Mahade Wildlife Sanctuary. And the other, in the centre of the state, the main road from Panjim to Belgaum, climbs Amund Ghat and passes through Mollem National Park. The third Ghat road is inside Netravali Wildlife Sanctuary in southeast Goa. This road climbs the Ghats only to access a few villages, and as it has very few vehicles passing on, it is the best road for birding. All these roads provide access to the higher forests of the Western Ghats in Goa, where it borders with Karnataka. The landscape here is that of a plateau. The forest is evergreen and is denser and less tall than the forest at lower altitudes. Some birds like rufous babbler, white-bellied blue flycatcher, and square-tailed black bulbul can be found in these forests, but rarely lower down. Most of the birding is done in the lower altitude forest, which is moist deciduous with pockets of evergreen in wetter areas and along the riverbanks. The trees here are taller and less dense than the forests of the higher altitude. The forest canopy is almost closed, and availability of grass is very limited. The area is more or less flat, and birding in the lower altitude forest is generally easy. Birds usually appear in mixed feeding flocks of drongos, bulbuls, orioles, leafbirds, and others. The best and most extensive lower altitude forests in Goa are in Kotigao Wildlife Sanctuary near Kanakona in South Goa and Bhagwan Mahavir Sanctuary near Mollem. Kotigao has a very healthy forest with very tall deciduous trees. It's possible to stay inside the buffer zone of the sanctuary in homestays and in the accommodation block of the forest department. A good area for birding is around a watchtower that is built on a tree above a pond, known as treetop. Make sure the ladder to the watchtower is in good condition before attempting to climb. Green imperial pigeon prefers lowland forest, and it is easier to find in Kotigao than any other place in Goa. In Mollem, the most popular areas among birders are near the 12th century Kadamba-style Tamdi Surla temple, which is a monument of national importance in Goa. The trek to Sunset Point starts from the National Highway at the entrance with a large statue of Bhagwan Mahavir. It starts in lower altitude forest and climbs the Ghats to a watchtower, from where it is possible to watch the sunset. Bondla Wildlife Sanctuary is the nearest sanctuary to the coast in North Goa and is the most popular and easiest forest to bird in. Birding is done along the road that leads to the accommodation and offices block on the top of a small hill. There is little traffic on this road as it only goes to the zoo, which is in the centre of the sanctuary. The areas below and above the Ghats are flat. Soon after the escarpment, which is covered with forest, islands of agricultural land slowly appear. First farms and later villages until the forest disappears altogether and gives way to human settlement and agriculture. The area just below the Ghats is called the Tribal Belt and is inhabited by 4 main tribal communities: the Gaudas, Kunbis, Velips, and Dangars. These tribal communities are believed to have been the first settlers in Goa. They are mainly Hindus, but the Portuguese converted some to Catholicism. Women play a major role in economic, social and political activities, but cannot take part in any religious rituals, not even related to the deity worshipped in the household. These tribes practice the Hindu religion and worship Lord Mallikarjun, a form of Lord Shiva. Out of 27 endemic birds of the Western Ghats, 17 are present in Goa. Some species like Malabar trogon and southern hill myna are also found in Sri Lanka. Others, such as Malabar pied hornbill and white-cheeked barbet, are distributed in other forests in south and central India. And some, like pied hornbill and mountain imperial pigeon, have a separated population in the Western Ghats, while their main distribution is in northeast India and further east into Southeast Asia. Most of the birds are common. A morning walk in any forest should reveal many, and within a few days one should be able to locate all the common endemic birds. Some of the species, like Malabar whistling thrush and Malabar pied hornbill, stretch into forests of the coastal belt. But most, like flame-throated bulbul, the state bird of Goa, and Malabar grey hornbill, are confined only to the hills. Most birds are residents with very little seasonal movement. Most wintering forest birds that migrate from their breeding grounds in the Himalayas, like Indian blue robin, are rare in Goa. They may be seen as passage migrants on their way to South India. Birding at night can be very rewarding in the Western Ghats of Goa. Sri Lanka frogmouth is common in the forest. It is often heard calling at night. Open areas are good for nightjars. Their eyes reflect at night to torchlight. The owl family is well represented with 11 species. Some, like brown hawk and Indian scops owls, are increasing in numbers, while others, like oriental scops owl and brown fish owl, are declining. Owls can be seen during daytime roosting in trees. Sri Lanka bay owl lives in lowland forests and is very rare. It is better searched for in lowland forests in South India. Brown fish owl is one bird that has declined sharply in Goa. Until 15 years ago, it was common and was observed along any stream with water in the hills and along the coast, even by dry streams. It is now very rarely seen anywhere. We were lucky to document this owl's nesting in Molim National Park, near Tamdi Surla Temple, in the winter of 2011. There has been a large increase in the number of endemic bird species in the Western Ghats in the last 20 years. It's not that any bird species has been discovered recently, but it is due to the trend of splitting and upgrading subspecies into separate species. The southern Western Ghats moist deciduous forest is similar to the microclimate of the eastern Himalayas, resulting in similar species becoming separated by the geographical distance. Most birds that were split, like southern hill myna and Malabar woodtrike, look little different to their northeastern cousins. Others, like the orange minivet, which was split from scarlet minivet, are nearly identical, and if it weren't for the geographical distance, it would be very difficult to identify them in the field. As a result of this trend, we now have Viger's sunbird, which was split from crimson sunbird. This bird is nearly endemic to Goa, and big listers come to Goa especially for this bird. It's a very common garden species, and of all the sunbirds, it is the one that is most attracted to water plates and feeders. It is common in the hot season and in monsoon, but very difficult to find in winter. Many houses and jungle resorts bordering the forest have established drinking places for birds in the form of bird plates, or bird baths as they are called in some countries. In places where there are domestic animals, plates should always be hung on trees or placed on poles to prevent predation by cats. The most popular place in South India to photograph drinking birds is the old magazine house in Ganchgudi in Karnataka, about an hour's drive from Goa's border in Mollem. I myself established the first set of water plates at Old Magazine House about 15 years ago. The management adopted the idea, and now many birders and photographers visit the resort specially to photograph the drinking birds. Mining of iron ore for export has always been a major threat to the environment of the Western Ghats. The way iron ore is mined, in open cast mines, leaves large scars of barren land and empty craters. Some efforts at planting exotic trees like Australian acacia and casuarina have been made by the miners. The mining lobby in Goa is very powerful, and mining is a large part of the economy of Goa, maybe larger even than tourism. For many years, NGOs were fighting against illegal mining in protected areas. With the declaration of Mahade and Netravali wildlife sanctuaries, mining activity stopped all over the Ghats, but scars remain and will never heal. Mining is still taking place in forests just outside the protected areas, and in the interior land between the Ghats and the coast. Most mammals of the Western Ghats are present also in Goa, but are rarely encountered. Malabar giant squirrel is common, and except for monkeys, it is the most likely animal to be encountered. They usually sit on high branches eating fruits and flowers. Indian bison, or gaur, is the state animal of Goa and may be seen in the forest. Other herbivores like spotted and barking deer are present. Numbers of tigers and leopards are increasing in Goa, largely thanks to the protection they receive in Dandeli and Anshi Tiger Reserve that borders Goa on its border with Karnataka. Wild dogs, or dhole, are probably the most likely carnivore that can be encountered, as they are active during the day. Indian palm civet, or toddy cat, is a common nocturnal animal and can be found even in gardens. Fruit bats, commonly known as flying foxes, are common and roost in large colonies. Monsoon is a very special season in the Western Ghats. As soon as the heavy rain starts, all the little streams start to flow. They join together to form larger streams with many little waterfalls that turn larger as the stream gets nearer to the escarpment. The barren plateau on the top of the Ghats turns green, and towards the end of monsoon in September and October, it is covered with wildflowers. The area near Chorla Ghat, which is part of the northern Western Ghats evergreen forest, is good for flowers, but the best area is the road to Tilari Ghat, which is in Maharashtra and accessed from Goa via Asonora Dodamarg Road. The wet condition and the dense forest makes birding very difficult. A few birds, like slaty-legged crake, may be easier to locate in the monsoon, but it is also the best season for insects and amphibians, with many species of endemic frogs. Although there are big infrastructural projects that are threatening to cut through Molem National Park, the forests of the Western Ghats in Goa are in better shape now than previously. Since 1999, all the Western Ghats in Goa have been a protected area. Felling of trees and mining have stopped. Some villages have been relocated and tourism is well monitored. Goa's forests are some of the most extensive and richest in birdlife in the whole of the country.